Hi, Steve. Hi, Sean.
Hey, guys.
I was thinking about how lucky I was to be on the stage with you guys, and I was thinking, it took 4 evangelists to write the New Testament, but here, right on the stage in front of you have the guy who rewrote the Bible of how to start up and rewrote the Bible of marketing in Sean Ellis. So we're lucky to have you here, guys. Let's start at the beginning. Steve, one of the best ways to define what something is, in your case, the lean startup technique, is to define what it's not. And the one thing it most definitely is not is a business plan. So what's wrong with business plans?
Yeah, so one of the things we figured out after 50 years of doing entrepreneurship in Silicon Valley and doing startups is that, get ready for it, startups aren't smaller versions of large companies. Now, that might seem intuitively obvious, but for 50 years, investors in Silicon Valley and elsewhere said to startups that you do everything large companies do. They write business plan, you write a business plan. They write a 5-year forecast, we want you to write a 5-year forecast. They hire sales, marketing, biz dev, we want you to do that, and they build products with waterfall engineering, you too. And, we did that, and we were kind of surprised that after we launched the product, we used to think the biggest problem we were going to have is, did we have a big enough office to put all the bags of money that were going to come on day one? And we were always surprised that that didn't happen. And the reason why is no business plan survives first contact with customers. It turned out that we were using a methodology that was perfect for large corporations, but we had no tools at all that actually made sense when instead of executing a series of knowns, like in a large company, we were dealing with a series of unknowns, which are what a startup was. And so myself, Eric Ries, and Alexander Osterwalder, and then later, of course, with Sean's work, put together this idea called the lean startup, which is very, very, very different from how to write a business plan.
All right, good. All right, we'll hold it there for a second. Sean, I'm going to put the same question to you. What is growth hacking, and how is growth hacking different from what everyone thinks of when they think of marketing?
Okay, so marketing is something that's been around for a really long time, and it starts with this annual marketing plan, and it's based on kind of a set of channels that don't change a whole lot over time, and all of us know that channels change really quickly today. And so growth hacking is really, it's not that annual planning cycle that marketing is. It goes in weekly sprints. It's a process of testing and figuring out what's going to work kind of week to week, monitoring that, taking advantage of the data feedback loops, really learning when something works, doubling down on it. And so it's not annual planning cycles. It's not awareness building. A lot of marketing is about awareness building. I used to have startups all the time say, can you come and help us build awareness for our startup? You don't have budgets close to being big enough to build awareness. Focus on sustainable customer acquisition with a return on investment, and just keep cycling money based on that, and you'll build awareness over time through experiences. So that's on the contrast to marketing. It's also, there's a lot of misunderstandings with growth hacking. It's not some magic bag of hacks that you can just apply in any business. It's actually more of a process of testing and figuring out what's going to work. And those are probably the biggest definers of what it's not.
Okay, all right, good. Steve, when I think of the kind of the pillars of the lean startup technique, I think of 3 things. I think of except that the business model is a hypothesis, that you have to get out of the building and talk to customers, and you need to practice agile build techniques.
I could go now. You just gave the
Oh, no. You need to explain those.
So it turns out that, how many of you are passionate founders? Come on. All right. How many of you believe you're visionaries? Come on, raise your hand. So the good news is most of you are hallucinating. The bad news is we don't know which one. And the lean startup methodology is just a way to figure out whether you're hallucinating or you're visionary without spending lots of time and money to do so. The lean methodology starts with, even though you truly believe on day one, you understand customers' problems, and all you need to do is build that app or ship that product or get that hardware out, and the piles of money will come in. Lean says that's not how the world works. Lean says that all you have on day one is a series of untested hypotheses, and I use the word hypotheses at Stanford because my students pay $50,000 a year and want to hear big words. But outside of Stanford, it just means you're effing guessing. You're guessing about who your customers are, what your channel is, what product market fit, that is, what features should go with what customers, what's the pricing, what are the other pieces you need. You're mostly just guessing. And the way we used to solve that is, let's build the product, let's ship it, and then we'll find out later no one's buying it, and we'll do Rev 2, 3, and N. And that's okay if you have infinite time, money, resource, and patience, but Lean says there's now a much better way to do that. Why don't we just simply break down what all those hypotheses are? What are the pieces you need to know to build a successful company? Alexander Osterwalder wrote a book called Business Model Generation, and he got all these complex ideas down into a single piece of paper with 9 boxes on it called the Business Model Canvas. You all ought to read it. We make you write down your hypotheses. Then step 2 is the part I invented that says, guess what? There are no facts inside your building, so get the hell outside. Because there's no possible way you could be smarter than the collective intelligence of potential customers and stakeholders and regulators, or depending on what your business is. And step 3 is Eric Ries's contribution that says, why are we building our product serially? Why don't we build our product incrementally and iteratively, testing each one of those hypotheses with what's called a minimum viable product? And most of the time, we're going to find out that we're wrong about some part of our business. We got the wrong customer segment. We got the wrong pricing. Maybe feature 3 should be feature 1, or these other 6 features aren't needed. Lean says we're allowed to be wrong because we could do something called a pivot. And a pivot is defined as a substantive change to one or more of those business model hypotheses. We got something wrong. But instead of spending money or firing a VP of sales or firing the head of engineering, we simply fire the plan before we fire the people. What was your question?
I forget.
I answered someone.
Sean. Growth hacking sounds to me like a Lean applied to customer acquisition and marketing.
Yep.
But you have the concept that I found really attractive, and the image is really cool, of a flywheel of growth. Could you explain that?
Yeah, that ultimately, over time, so it is very similar. You have a hypothesis, you're testing that hypothesis. The more tests you run per week, the more you're going to figure out ways to grow the business. Many of them aren't going to work, some of them will, and over time you start to build momentum in the business, and that gives you that flywheel over time of, generally, if what you're optimizing for is a great experience with your product. So growth hacking is not just about external customer acquisition, but it's really about the full funnel, running those experiments through customer acquisition, activation, retention, engagement, everything that drives an experience with the product. That unlocks word of mouth. That unlocks a lot more of the pieces that really drive organic growth, which complements all of the tactics that you're figuing out over time.
All right, so give me an example of a company that's done that.
So Dropbox, huge part of Dropbox. Everybody looks at Dropbox and they think, oh, well, it's got this natural virality with the sharing that we have with folders or with files. And yes, all of those things were important, yet while I was there, the #1 source of new users was through just natural word of mouth. People were really excited about it. They loved the experience. They told other people about it.